Okay, seeing that we have quorum, the Community Redevelopment and Housing Commission meeting of November 15th is officially called to order. As a reminder, commissioners, please remember to turn on your microphones. I've been asked to remind you. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Recording Secretary, please take roll call.
Richard Santana, Angie Cano, David De Leon, Monica Garcia. Here. Mike Tardif.
Here.
Gary Wood.
Here.
Isuri Ramos. Here. Aurora Solano. Here. Vince Frazier.
Present.
Gilbert Vasquez. Here. So, Chair, we have quorum.
Thank you. Were there any excused absences?
No.
Thank you very much. Okay, this is the time for the Commission to consider matters under consent calendar items 1 and 2. Do any members have any corrections to the minutes, items they wish to pull for separate discussion or abstain on? They're quite extensive. If you haven't had a chance to read them, I'll just wait a brief moment here. Is it okay to ask if the staff has any comments on this time? On the minutes?
No comments on the minutes. Tay really does a terrific job on these minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say I did read through them, and they were very extensive. It was a big meeting. I didn't see anything that I saw for corrections. Does the Commission have any questions of the staff or corrections to the minutes?
No.
No.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to consider items 1 through 2?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
I think we're actually,
Hodges?
we're going to ask for the motions and the seconds to come from our appointed commissioners from the city council members. I think the housing commissioners were absolutely able to participate in the conversations, but not as voting members.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. I apologize. You might have, if you weren't at the last meeting, this came up a couple of times and we discussed it. So I apologize.
All right.
Could I have a second from one of the commissioners?
Second. Go ahead. She did it first.
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramos. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries 4-0 with 3 commissioners noted as absent. Okay. The next order of business tonight is the consideration of regular business items. The first and only item on the business calendar is item number 3, Community Development Block Grant Public Services Application for Nonprofit Organizations. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on the matter? If so, you may fill out a request to speak form with the secretary, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Also, we will not accept any additional requests to speak cards once we begin the public comment session. If you haven't already done so, please give your form to the recording secretary. And from all appearances, I do not believe we have public speakers tonight. So at this time, I'd like to ask if staff will be reporting on this matter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Staff do have a presentation on this item. This is, as you're aware, this is one of the most important allocations of the year by our Community Redevelopment and Housing Commission members, and Ms. Sylvia Vasquez will be giving our presentation today.
Excellent.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for being here. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about the Community Development Block Grant Funding Application for fiscal year 2018 through 2019. CDBG, as you're aware, is a program funded by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. The purpose of CDBG is to develop viable urban communities by providing decent housing, a suitable living environment, and expanding economic opportunities, principally for low and moderate income persons. That's the goal of CDBG, and for that reason we receive funding on an annual basis, and approximately we're anticipating receiving $5.2 million for fiscal year 18-19. That's based on this fiscal year's allocation. We don't anticipate it to be reduced or increased at this time. If anything, there may be some minor reductions. From those funds that we are anticipating receiving from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, we can use a maximum of 15% for public services. And in order to allocate that 15% for public services, we call on your support and your support for rating applications with the nonprofits. We will have an online application process for nonprofits to apply for these funds, and there will be mandatory training for any nonprofit who wishes to apply. Once those applications are received, the Community and Redevelopment Housing Commissioners will be able to rate those applications, make funding recommendations, which we will then take to City Council. In the presentation, you will see a tentative timeline. Again, this is tentative. Sometimes things change here and there. But we anticipate opening up the application for the CDBG funds on January 8th. We anticipate having the trainings for the nonprofit subrecipients the whole month of January. We might have 4 to 5 different workshops for them to attend. They only need to attend one. Applications will be due February 5th, and staff will do an internal review to ensure that the programs proposed by the nonprofits are eligible per CDBG requirements. Once we've done that initial review of the applications, it will be handed off or checked off for you to review, and that would be done through an online rating system, which is the same system that you used in the previous year. During the time that you're rating the presentations, we will also hold a public hearing for CDBG. At that point, nonprofit applicants will be invited to come in and provide public comment. They'll have about a 3-minute presentation to give you in regards to their programs. Based on that, you can take the information that you hear at the public hearing, you can take the information from the application, and finalize your ratings. Once you submit your ratings to us here at the city, we will then compile the data, look to see the average recommended amount of funding from each commissioner that will be rating the applications, and we bring that back to you in an item so that you can discuss the final funding recommendations that will go to City Council. It's anticipated to go to City Council in April. So that's why we're starting this early. It is a process, and because we do have public hearings and items for you to recommend, we do try to plan ahead. Currently, in this fiscal year, the program requirements included a benefit to low and moderate income persons, and that's per federal requirement, so that's something that can't be waived. At least 51% of the individuals being served by the nonprofits must be low and moderate income. Most of the nonprofits that have applied in the past tend to try to serve 90 to 100% low income, so that's not an issue for most of the nonprofits that do apply. A second requirement is alignment with the City of Santa Ana strategic plan goal. That's always a push that any of our funds are used to reach a strategic plan goal. The third requirement was an emphasis on crime prevention, intervention, and suppression efforts for children, youth, and families. This emphasis came from direction of City Council. Additionally, we do have a minimum grant request per program of $30,000. So any nonprofit that wants to apply must request a minimum of $30,000. The reason we do that is because we want to ensure sufficient funding for the program so that the nonprofits can effectively run their program. It does take a lot of work to run a federal grant. There's a lot of reporting requirements and accounting requirements that must be adhered to, so we want to ensure that it's a program where the benefit is going to be worth the effort. So for this coming year, we recommend keeping those the same requirements as last year, but incorporating additional requirements. Currently, the emphasis is on crime prevention, suppression, and intervention for youth, for children, youth, and families, and we want to add a second emphasis for economic development programs. So we can have two emphasis. We can have crime prevention, intervention, and suppression, plus the economic development. So if they fit into one of those two categories, then we could potentially make that application eligible for further review. Okay?
And by economic development, we're looking at programs that promote financial literacy, economic empowerment, and worker cooperatives.
So we have received feedback from the community on the importance on economic development, and we wanted to ensure that we're not leaving that out of potential funding for CDBG. Also, the second recommendation is to allow for joint applications. Currently, and in previous years, we allowed nonprofits to apply as a single entity. They could apply for funding. However, there's been a push by our city council to allow for more collaborative efforts. For that reason, we're now opening up the application process, or we're recommending that it's opened for joint applications. So 2 or more nonprofits could potentially apply for a program together, in sense not competing with each other, but collaborating with each other. The next recommendation that we'd like to make is to have a cap on the amount of funds requested by the nonprofits, and we're recommending a $75,000 cap. The reason for that is that that is a substantial amount that could potentially fund one body, and it's a number where there would be a substantial impact in our community. Now, if it's a joint applicant with 2 or more organizations, we're proposing to raise that cap to $100,000. So those are the recommendations that are incorporated into the draft application for your review. And with that, we are open and welcoming of any comments or any feedback, any input that you have on this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. I will open this up to questions and comments from the commission. But if I could, I will start this evening with Aurora Solano. Do you have any questions or comments? We'll work our way down this way, if that's okay. Thank you.
Earlier you said about online rate, like you would be accepting online. What is online rating systems?
In the past, we had an application that nonprofits had to type out or fill in manually and bring into the city to submit it. 2 years ago, we went away from that and we opened up an online process where now they can submit an application, answer questions online, and hit a submit button, so everything's tracked electronically versus them having to submit paper applications to us. So it's one of the things that we did to streamline our process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Senior Lieutenant Member Vasquez, any comments or questions, sir?
I'm curious to know more about the workers' co-op.
Workers' cooperatives are an initiative that's currently being looked into by our Economic Development Division. A workers' cooperative is a business, it's a business entity, but the owners are also the workers. So it's not you have one business owner that hires multiple people to do the work, and it's more of a collaborative effort between a number of business owners and workers that work together to make a profit. So it's more grassroots because you're able to bring in multiple resources, typically for low-income individuals, and really allow a business to start with a lot of support from the community and hopefully then grow from there.
Thank you. Excuse me, Lieutenant Member Frazier?
Yes. Thank you for the presentation. That was fantastic. The fact that you're wanting to change this to where the nonprofits can collaborate, does that preclude individual nonprofits from applying for funding for the same project that they may be working on outside of this? To increase their chances of getting a greater funding, because 2 people applying, even if it's for the same project, is $150,000.
Our intent is to make it program-based, so the program itself would receive $75,000. So if the nonprofits were in a collaborative proposing one program, then that program would have a cap on it. However, the individual organization could apply for a different program. So it wouldn't be to include them. The intent is that if they also have another program, let me give you an example. Currently, legally, is doing a domestic violence program and a record expungement program, both of those with approximately about $40,000 or so. So again, there's separate programs, and the cap would be for the programs also.
Okay, so the application is based on the nonprofit, but it's determined by the program.
Exactly.
Okay. And then just one other question. When you came to the $75,000 per program, do you have the data that supports over the last, say, 5 years of the applicants that were accepted and what their disbursements were?
Yes, actually, Chris has a handout. Is it okay for him to give a handout to our commissioners with that information?
And well, you're going to provide the background on the $75,000 cap
Yes.
with the handout?
I will.
Yep.
So what Tay is handing out to you right now is the recommended funding for last year and the previous year. So if we go based off of the recommended funding, we find that the recommended funding doesn't exceed the $75,000. And that's really what we were looking at, ensuring that we wouldn't be cutting down programs that currently are already in existence, in addition to potentially being sufficient funding to fund one body for the organization. If we provide maybe $20,000 for a nonprofit, that may not be substantial to have one person handling a program, but when we bump it up to $75,000, that could potentially be one body serving CDBG in that nonprofit.
And if you look at the funding recommendations for fiscal year 2017-2018, which we're currently in, you'll see that the Illumination Foundation was awarded $75,000, a little more than $75,000 after a reallocation of funds. But we didn't want to go above that, and that also is a part of the rationale on why we use the $75,000. What I would also like to point out too about these two documents, which I really like to point out as frequently as possible, is if you look between the fiscal year 2016 document and the 2017 document, you'll notice that in 2016 we allocated $331,000 roughly, and last year we allocated over $760,000. So we were able to double that amount for our commission and for our community through our CDBG application process. It was really a great achievement for our city as well, and the commission, as well as a great benefit to our community and community members.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
No further questions?
No further questions.
Vice Chair Tardif?
Thank you for the report and the recommendation. I particularly like the emphasis on economic development to be included, along with the additional emphases of crime prevention and suppression, and to support our children and youth and families. I was wondering if the maximum funding amount is $75,000, and how does that compare to last year or previous years?
If we look just at last year, based on the funding that was requested by the organizations, and that would be on the sheet that Chris handed out, the first column after the name shows you how much was requested versus how much was recommended by our commission. So we did have requests going up to $105,000. However, for the most part, most applications ranged anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000. It looks like 60 and 75 were the standard ask for the applications.
So we had a maximum of for an individual organization of 100,000, and now it's going to be 75. Is that right?
No, we actually have never had a cap.
We haven't had a cap.
We haven't had a cap. This is the first time implementing a cap.
Okay.
And and I apologize too, I forgot to add in a third rationale on the cap. During last year, during the discussion on the allocations of funding between the organizations, you'll notice that the Illumination Foundation requested $100,000, but then was awarded $75,000, And if you look down to the Delhi Center, they requested $105,000, but they were awarded $58,000. The third rationale in terms of the cap is, I think it's difficult to conceptually make an evidence-based decision on how to reduce funding requests down to what's available unless there's a cap.
Yeah, I agree.
Because
Sure. It
it's
makes
hard
sense.
to make programs relative. Yeah.
So this way, let's say two organizations both propose at 75,000, you're comparing programs as a whole versus one program for maybe 150,000 and one program for 75,000. It's sometimes harder to compare those types of programs. So the intent is that the organizations do submit maximum what they could do at 75,000, and then you could see for both organizations, if to do submit for 75, what that would look like as a whole program.
Okay, thank you. Those are my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Tardiff. Commissioner Garcia.
Okay, I don't have any questions, but I do want to let our newer commission members know that it is time consuming, so plan accordingly. I know it took me at least like 5 hours last time we did it to review the applications online and give them due diligence, so I just do warn you to kind of carve out time to do that in advance.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Excellent point.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ramos?
Yeah, I have a few questions and comments. Thank you for the presentation. My first question is on the emphasis on crime prevention, intervention, and/or suppression efforts for children, youth, and/or families. Was this an emphasis used last year?
Yes, that's the emphasis that was requested by our council that we incorporated into the application.
Okay, thank you. And I recall that. So my next question is, how long will this be an emphasis for? Or is that just pending on council recommending a new emphasis?
It can be based on council recommendation, and when we do our 5-year strategic plan, we could potentially look at having other emphasis as well. But it's really up to commission and council to really determine if that should still be an emphasis. But with our city and the statistics with youth, we want to ensure that we are focusing funds to help those youth and families.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Another question that I have is, can organizations that are not nonprofits apply with a nonprofit as a fiscal sponsor?
Yes, and that would be, for example, through like 10C as a fiscal sponsor
or
other types of
Charitable Ventures of Orange County?
Yes, that's acceptable.
Okay. And can we also recommend to lower the minimum funding amount? So I know that last year there was believed to be another source of funding available, not through CDBG. And from what I understood, more organizations were able to apply because there wasn't I think the minimum funding amount might have been a little different. So I've heard that with the $30,000, it can be a little limiting. So a lot of organizations don't need that much. So because they don't need that much, they don't apply for the CDBG funding.
It's always up to the discretion of the commission and council, but for the last 3 years, we have had the $30,000 cap, and the rationale behind that is because although organizations may request less, there is a lot of administrative work involved. And with the level of work involved, not only by the nonprofit group, but also on the city's end, it's very time consuming to review every invoice, to provide all of the documentation, to go out and monitor. So we believe that $30,000 is that good point where a program would really be worth all the administrative work on the side of both the nonprofits and the city staff.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to say I think it's great that there's a new emphasis on economic development, especially the worker cooperatives. We have a very large underground economy that could bring that could really be highlighted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Excellent questions. I'll go back to Commissioner De Leon. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the presentation on paper, and if you have any comments or questions, I'd like to invite you to share them.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I had a chance to look it over. Thank you to sending the attachments yesterday, so I had a good opportunity to look everything over, and I think it's a great recommendation that you're capping it at 75,000. I know last year it was trying to balance everything out, like, well, Illumination Foundation scored our highest, but they requested the highest amount. So how do we justify giving them 90,000 and somebody else? So it's great that you're capping it. I think it's going to make life a lot easier for us as well, and for you guys that have to allocate funds. So good job on that. I know that we're making progress, and the CDBG program in itself, we're making progress, we're getting better. One of the things that we discussed last year after evaluating was the follow-up, and to make sure that these organizations that are receiving funds are actually implementing the programs that they applied for, having a decent network within the community. Myself, I know firsthand that some of these organizations that received money haven't even started their programs, or are probably not using the money exactly as they applied for. So I'm looking forward to January and our mid-year audit, I guess you could say. Can we put that audit as part of the application process, where if they are granted funds, let's say in June, by November there is a 6-month audit to make sure that they are following protocol? What I'm seeing now with some of the current recipients, and this is just through social media or just personal knowledge of these organizations, is that they're starting to hurry. They're trying to rush some kind of program. They're trying to rush implementation of some kind of program to give the perception that they are being efficient with the money, and in reality they're not. We had applicants that have amazing grant writers that had great packets that I was blown away by, and then the boots on the ground reality of that organization is that they're not as effective. But in turn, there's organizations that do not have access to a good grant writer, but they do really good things within the community. So I think a mid-year audit would cure a lot of these problems or the mismanagement of funds to make sure that everything's as efficient. So is it too late to implement some kind of mid-year audit that we can hold ourselves to as a commission, in turn holding these nonprofits responsible?
That's something we can definitely look into. I would like to let you know that we do desk audits of our subrecipients on a quarterly basis. So we've already received first quarter invoices. Those are currently under review, and first quarter progress reports. Just to touch on one point, I understand that maybe not all organizations get going as quickly as others, and that could be for a number of reasons. Our programs start as of July 1st and then June 30th of the following year. Sure. So some of the organizations that maybe provide tutoring will wait until the September months when the youth are back in school to actually start their recruitment efforts. So not all of them may start in July.
Sure.
However, I'd be more than happy to talk to you and maybe discuss which organizations you feel are falling behind. We can definitely look into that and provide you with reports on those organizations. We do a risk assessment for all of our organizations. And that risk assessment really identifies who we as a city go out to audit or to monitor. And that's done taking different criteria in mind. For example, has this organization been audited before? And if they were audited before, did they pass the audit? Were there any issues in the audit? If they haven't been audited in the past or monitored, then that's something that is higher on our list to go out to monitor. And additionally, errors on maybe invoicing or errors on their reporting. That's also something that we look for during our quarterly desk audits. If we find discrepancies, then that's also a heightened point for us to go out and audit. So something like falling behind, not keeping up with the numbers that they stated they would have based on our agreement, is a red flag for us to go out and audit them. So we do have certain mechanisms in place to potentially target those higher risk organizations. That doesn't mean that we monitor every organization every year, We do work with them on a continuous basis. We do review their reporting. We do ask them questions on how their programs are going. And we do review every single invoice that they submit and all the records to ensure that we're only reimbursing for allowable expenses. So those are done on a quarterly basis through a desk audit. Going out on site would be based on a risk assessment that we do conduct. But again, I'd be happy to talk to Judson and discuss what other opportunities there are for monitoring. I know for January we were planning on visiting some sites so you could see the progress of some of our nonprofits, and we're happy to do that.
And Commissioner De Leon, I think to summarize what Sylvia is saying as well. What I imagine what I assume you're recommending too is under page 3 of the application, where it states additional requirements. If you go to that section, 3 sentences down, the city will hold organizations accountable for the information included, such as expected service levels. I think what you're asking is we expand on that section by incorporating much of the information that Sylvia just stated, as well as provide a statement that our Community Redevelopment and Housing Commission will be conducting a site visit to each of the projects in a mid-year site visit to each of the projects. Is that
absolutely? When you say we, who's we?
We monitor.
Sure. Who's we?
We have a financial consultant that assists with the fiscal monitoring, and Chris Dalton and I and myself go out to these sites to monitor. The city.
And I say this with all due respect. Is it efficient? Are you catching anything with as frequent as you're doing your quarterly audits and stuff and financial records? Are you catching discrepancies? Are you how effective is your work?
We do catch discrepancies, and those discrepancies are then corrected. It might just be a mistake depending on who's submitting the work. Really, with the financial, we're really strong on our financial component because we will not approve an invoice unless we have every single document that we need in order to reimburse every single penny. So that's great. With the program, that's a little more, it fluctuates a little bit more. But we do, when we go on site, review sign-in sheets, we review documents, we review income verification, we review the roster, we randomly select some of those participants, and we look at their files or the services that they were provided. So we do a thorough review there. And if, for example, we find a discrepancy, we will ask why the discrepancy exists and give the opportunity for a response.
Last question, Chair. Is do you feel, and I understand we're an advisory board, I get it. Do you feel you have the sufficient resources or the support to thoroughly perform your duties? Do you feel like you need another staff member?
I think currently we have sufficient staffing to do the monitorings, yes.
Perfect.
The reason that we do have a consultant do our fiscal monitoring is because that's where we found that we needed the additional assistance.
Okay.
If we were to need additional assistance with the program monitoring, that's always something that we can contract out also.
Okay, so you only do your on-site inspections if you see red flags?
Yes, and we're constantly in contact with our nonprofits to see what it is that they're doing. They invite us to some of the events that they're holding. For example, ALBI, that's one of our very new nonprofits. They recently had 2 performances, one at Monte Vista Elementary School and one at Delhi Center. I personally wasn't able to attend, but I did receive the videos for those performances. So again, we are constantly engaging with our nonprofits to make sure that they have all the support they need and that they're including us so we can highlight any of the projects that they do.
Perfect. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a couple quick questions and comments, and Commissioner De Leon did raise a very excellent point and question, and mine was a little bit more brief on that. Is it possible, because we're going to be meeting or getting into this process pretty heavily in February and March, is it possible, since January is the midpoint, to see just a brief summary next to the block grant recipients from 2017, 2018 on what has already been allocated, how much they've used, how much has been invoiced? Is that
we
possible?
can definitely email you that analysis once our second quarter invoices are processed, so it would be mid-January.
Okay. I mean,
can
could
do
that be
that.
available for our meeting in January?
Yes.
Because that's usually it'll be the end of January, and then it just might give us a little bit more comfort to see where they are at the midpoint.
Absolutely. We can definitely provide that information. Mid-January is pretty optimistic because we would be,
Yeah.
do you think we would have the invoices up to mid-January?
We would have the reporting complete, and we'd at least have the estimated expenditures from the second quarter budget.
Chris?
Would those financial figures they'd be estimates, but typically they don't fluctuate too much.
Can we ask, if I may, just in case, because
My only concern, Judson, would be the next meeting would be February 28th, and I believe you would have all these people sitting in front of us while we're trying to look at a review.
Yeah, I just, you guys are confident that we can meet that?
We can definitely provide it while it's during the review period of the applications, if that would be helpful during your review.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one more piece of it to see how efficient the monies are being out or being requested or invoiced. I realize it's not going to be, they're not asking for 25% every quarter. You know, it may be, some may be tilted towards the end or the beginning, but it's just another piece, so.
Okay. I just, invoicing is sometimes not very timely because invoices are being processed.
We review payroll records, time cards, proof of payment, every single detail. So it does take a while to review for the 15 organizations.
And so I just wanted to make sure we'd be able to meet your expectations. But so January, we can definitely provide you with the information.
Fair enough. I was about to say you could just tell us what happened in 2016 and 2017 with the actuals against what was allocated or recommended, but most of those I don't see in 2017, 2018, so it really wouldn't be relevant.
Absolutely.
Any extra bits you can give us is very helpful. And I would venture that any commissioner that has a concern with recipients where they're seeing issues or they're seeing potential issues or hearing about things could bring that to staff's attention via an email or a phone call.
Definitely, something like that would trigger a red flag for us to go out and monitor immediately.
Okay, much appreciated. You know, my first question was going to be how the allocation of estimated public service funding stacked up next year against last year, but you already showed us that. It was 769 and it's going to be about 792.
We're working with the figures that we received this year. It may be reduced by maybe 0.2%, 0.5%. There was, I think, a 0.2% reduction from previous year to this year. So we actually received more money than we anticipated. So just to keep it clean, we're just going to go based off of current year allocation and anticipate potentially a little bit of a drop, but minor, 0.2% maybe.
Okay, so it's very close. I think my most extensive question was going to be in regards to the application review and recommendation process from the commissioners. Last year, or this year, was the first time that I had done that, and it was very involved, and I'm sure each commissioner handled it in varying ways, you know, and did it in ways that they were able to, that made sense to them. For me, it made sense to put all this into a spreadsheet so that as I was looking at one, I could keep referring back to where I was and keep the judging somewhat consistent, because if you start here, and by the time you get to the end, your judging may have, you know, completely moved as far as the needle. So I'm wondering if there's any changes to the format we're going to receive from the city, Chris might be able to answer, that differs from last year to this year. And if
I didn't make any changes to the reviewing process, but if you do have any comments, you know, things that you may want changed, I'm currently taking all the feedback. I'm going to redo the application. I can redo the review process at that time as well, but it'll be pretty much the exact same.
Right, and unless any of the commissioners had issues, I mean, several of us did it last year.
If I can just comment, the process has gotten a lot easier over the years because I've done it a few times, and taking it online, or this year, the way we did, was a big improvement because it's much easier to follow, at least it was for me, and you don't waste paper. And because before we used to get a big binder. So I think it conserves.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the benefit is, I think this year again, several of the commissioners, it'll be their second time doing this, and should be fine. So it is going to look the same as it did last year.
Yes, sir.
Fair enough. Thank you, sir.
And Commissioner, what if, since you asked the question about the review of the applications, we were gonna ask you this one-on-one as our chair, but I think it may be a question as well for you as well as the whole council, commission. For the meeting, the public hearing on February 28th, I was discussing this with Sylvia a bit. I would assume that it would be more comfortable if you were all around a round table and able to have your applications and documents in front of you, spread them out, have the applicants come in, make their presentations, all in compliance with the Brown Act, all a recorded meeting. But I would propose that we move the meeting for that date to our Ross Annex room, so that you can spread the applications out, converse more easily among you guys regarding your decisions on how how you're going to score the applications in the end prior to the March 9th deadline. Any thoughts on that proposal?
Well, if you're asking now, and you are, I'll go first and ask the other commissioners. For myself, speaking just for myself, and it was my first time. Commissioner Garcia has done it several times. I'm not sure if De Leon has as well. It not having my stack of notes with me. What I did bring to that meeting was a synopsis or a one-sheet recap of what I had graded in total each of these applicants. And as I left that sitting, I didn't want to use that to sway my preconceived idea of what the person was going to present. So for me, I tried not to look at that, and as the presenter came up and told their story and gave their presentation, it gave me a chance to see it as a fresh look from them and how they were presenting themselves, and I was able to just judge the speaker and the presentation for their ability to convey what they were trying to do. Maybe that was wrong, and so the ones that really piqued my interest and made me think of things I didn't think of from an application piece of paper, I was able to make my notes on the speakers and go back and look and adjust accordingly. That was my take on it. So it worked the way we did it last time, but I will ask the other commissioners that were here last time, if that's okay. Any input from Garcia, Tardif, or De Leon?
I will say that it kind of seems counterintuitive to have the public hearing after we do the review. I'm trying to remember. So that's we review the application first, and then we have the public hearing, correct?
And then we still have time.
Yes, I'm trying to remember the process. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then you have 10 additional days then to submit your scoring and rating for.
It does seem counterintuitive to not have them present first and then us fill out the application and whatnot, but they space everything out to give you the opportunity to go back and change or provide additional input or kind of change your mind, if you will. I don't know. So I don't have any problems with the way it's structured now, but I'm open to ideas and different, considering that it's new. You're new to the process, or it's your second time.
To clarify what I'm saying, as a board, your scores are relative. So if Commissioner De Leon doesn't favor Illumination Foundation, scores them a 50 out of 100, and you really love their presentation and application, you score them a 90 out of 100. Well, your scores are relative, and what I'm proposing is a different setting for you guys to be able to converse more effectively. And that's all we're proposing for that February 28th meeting, so that you're in a more comfortable setting. You're able to converse. You hear the presentations by the nonprofit, and then converse more easily between you in a different setting instead of at the dais.
With the applicant still in the room?
They would be allowed to continue to be present. I mean, most situations they would they could be present while you're discussing their applications in the meeting, which may make it more uncomfortable for you. But
is there enough space there to because last time we had a good turnout. There was a lot of people here earlier this year.
The room was, unless you brought them in one at a time, or
if we open up the second side of that room, I think there'd be sufficient space for members of the public and as well as the organizations.
Well, I'll take another stab at this and then ask others. I think it's a great idea, but there's also a problem I see in that the last meeting, or the last time we did this, it was a fairly lengthy meeting. I think it was 2 hours, maybe even 3. And what was interesting was these presenters came up and they presented. And first off, the clock wasn't working. We fixed that problem, so they weren't getting 5 minutes; they were getting 3. And then, Commissioner or Chairperson Garcia at the time would thank them, but there was no question or answer. My only concern is that
We did have a question and answer.
the presenters presented very quickly, and then there was no comments from any of us. They presented and they left, and that was it.
We didn't really have a discussion.
There was no discussion. There was none. And I'm open to that, but if you open that up to, we have a 5-minute discussion on each one, you're talking 8 minutes times 40 applicants or 50. It could be 4 or 5 hours, and that's fine.
It's just a proposal and just an idea. I mean, it's over $750,000, so it's an important allocation for the commission.
Can we come back? Can we all think about that for the next month and come back and put that on the agenda for us to consider as an item to change next month? Sure.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
So we're proposing to add a component for a discussion?
For each applicant.
Okay.
If in a roundtable setting, Commissioner De Leon?
What you're proposing, was that available to us last year? Were we open to ask questions to the speakers?
We structured it similar to how we had done in previous years. It was again 3 minutes per presenter and
The way it's set up as a public hearing, the presenters do have 3 minutes,
Right.
and we run it as a public hearing, which means that it's one after the other. So you could potentially ask a question, but Ryan, I would defer to you for any feedback on that.
Yeah, no, it's a public hearing. It's an open forum. You can certainly ask questions of the applicants. You can take comments and amongst yourselves and talk about each item as it comes, or you can have all the presenters present, save it to the end, and then start your discussion. It's really up to the discretion of the commission how you want to proceed. But the key part of it is that it is a public hearing, so it does need to remain open and in front of whoever wants to be there to listen.
I do recall, so it's similar format. You're just suggesting a different venue so we could have better dialogue. What I would say is I don't really see us as a commission or commissioners, individual commissioners, asking questions, because if I'm not mistaken, you instructed us that we couldn't ask specific questions to their specific program because it would show favoritism, or that it would show favoritism towards one organization. So like if we had KidWorks here and they were requesting, they were making their speech and we asked specifics about their organization, I do recall somebody telling me we can't get too specific about their program because the questions we pose have to be universal.
I agree with that, David. I would also say that we did have good discussion at the meeting that we took the vote on of who we were going to designate funds for. We had a real good discussion at that time. I see it problematic having a discussion immediately after all the presentations. I mean, of course, it'd have to be open, available per the Brown Act, and I just don't see it.
It'd be hard to keep track of all the questions over the course of 2 hours when 40 people are presenting and then come back and have that at the end. I mean, to me, it would make sense to do it as we go along if that's what we choose to do.
That is problematic as well as if you want to be here for a long time.
No, I tend to agree. I think Judson Brown, Mr. Brown, it's an excellent offer or suggestion in a sense to make it more comfortable for us to have that roundtable. And if it's okay, Commissioner Ramos.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm understanding it all correctly, but Commissioner De Leon, I think raises a good point. I think we might have questions. I know I'm going to have questions after I read their applications. So is there a way that maybe as we review them, if we have any questions, we can send them all to staff, and staff can then put those questions together, ask the nonprofit to answer them after they present? So then it's a little more universal in that they won't know if the concern is what commissioner it's coming from. That would kind of remove that concern. And maybe a lot of the questions can apply to all of the nonprofits. I think that we might all have similar questions for each of them. Some might be more program specific, and if they're deemed inappropriate, I think they could be removed. But I wouldn't feel comfortable receiving a presentation that I can't ask questions on. So I'm trying to see how we can work around that so that we're not all walking away feeling like we kind of just sat here and were talked to and not really engaged with the presenter.
Absolutely. We're definitely fine with that proposal you sending the questions to staff afterwards, if you want to follow that structure.
You mean during the review process?
Yeah, during the review process. So that staff can then pose them.
Yeah.
Or they can be maybe sent out to the nonprofits as they're preparing their presentation, so that they come and ready to include those answers in that presentation to also save a little bit of time. I don't know how other commissioners feel about that proposal.
There's no issue. There's no issues with that. There's no issues with that. But Mr. Chairman, I apologize for jumping in on your questions. It was a proposal. Like you mentioned, we'll go ahead and add it to the agenda. It's the specific agenda item is to change the venue to the Ross Annex room, and make any potential adjustments to the structure of the public hearing and the meeting itself.
No, and thank you for doing that. I'm only asking because then each of us can think about it for the next few weeks and consider that, so that when it comes up as an item on the agenda, we can discuss it and vote on it, yes or no. Okay? Thank you very much.
Can I make another
please,
comment? I do, as past chair of this commission, I have presided over past public hearings for these funds, and we have asked, even other chairpersons, is there any questions after each presentation? And it varies by commissioner. So I remember asking earlier this year if anybody had questions after presentations, or I might have missed it, but I do remember a lot of times we didn't have questions, and it happened. I know the hearing goes by really fast because it's one presentation after the other, but I do think there's room for a discussion, and also in the way that we craft the Q&A time in there, or how we weave it in after each presentation. I think it would be a great idea, just because we don't want to kind of intimidate some of the presenters with questions they might not be prepared to answer. I think it's a great idea to submit our questions after or before the presentations that they can answer, because we don't want to put them, they might not be ready to answer them on the spot during the hearing. So I just want to throw that out there.
I would include that as part of our discussion next month. I mean, let's all think about that, and it's worth revisiting one more time before we get to that process and do it. Fair enough? Okay, regroup here. Oh, my other question was on the tentative timeline. Was it, does this follow consistently with last year and the years before? Was it in February that we were presented to? Was it that early in the year, or was it March?
I think we started a little bit later that year.
Why is that?
Why is that? Because we were still working out the application and finalizing and getting it ready. When was the application released? I think in February.
It was released in February, so everything was basically condensed from February to April.
So this doesn't have any special meetings, and last time, because we started the process later, we did have a special meeting along the way, and so I think you met twice in March.
Yeah, twice.
Okay, so this is moving it up a little bit and giving us the additional time to get ready for it. You answered the question on the emphasis that came from the City Council. And I'm not sure, Sylvia or Judson, could you just list off again so I can write down what were three economic development programs, or the three branches you're trying to?
There was financial literacy, economic empowerment, and co-ops. So those were three that are out there that nonprofits are speaking of, but it doesn't have to be limited to just those.
Got it. And speaking of the joint application process, can you give an example of how would that be two separate entities that might join together to form a collaboration, or would it be the same group that has two different entities running from it?
It could work a number of ways. The way we anticipated, let's say there's a program that only does tutoring and a program that only does sports, and maybe they want to work together to combine those youth and maybe provide tutoring and sports so that they're not veering away from what their mission is, but they're strengthening the program by providing both aspects.
Okay. That's a good idea. Okay. That was all I had on that. Thank you very much. Is there any other questions before we move to a vote?
I have a question.
Yes.
So for the nonprofits, I know that America on Track works with the diocese, like the Catholic diocese. So are other programs limited to just the SAOSD district, or are they allowed to work with the Orange County diocese, like Catholic schools such as St. Anne's, St. Joseph, and other schools?
So, for example, America on Track runs a program, and they're welcome to work with whatever organizations they can to be able to recruit the youth and provide services to youth. So if they're working with the diocese, that's great. They're bringing that program into them, and they're able to do that with anyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then, real quick, with us holding over to next month to consider if we're going to change the presentation format, for the attorney, our legal representative, Mr. Hodges, is it okay to go ahead and continue with the motion the way it's written on moving forward? I think the language is such that it is okay.
I think the way that we might set this up, and just briefly discuss it with Judson, is we might set this up as a work study session. So I think you can take action on this now, and then it'll be a further discussion in terms of procedurally how it will be presented. But you can take action on this motion tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hodges.
Absolutely.
Do we have a motion at this time to recommend the Commission provide input on the nonprofit community development block grant application for fiscal year 2018 through 2019 for item number 3? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner De Leon. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Tardif. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Then the motion carries 5-0 with 2 commissioners noted as absent. The next order of business are for comments. At this time, does the public have any comments they wish to share with the commissioner? Please know that you have 3 minutes to speak. I see one public member back there. No? Thank you very much. Does staff have any comments they wish to share with the commission?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you for your consideration of the agenda item that we're proposing to add to the agenda for December. So starting with that, the first comment we have is we'd like to request to move the December 27th regular meeting to December 20th as a special meeting. I think we're going to have many of our staff out during that week of December 26th through December 28th. Our offices are only open those 3 business days, and this would facilitate our staff being present, as well as it may apply to many of our commissioners' preferences to hold the meeting the week before on December 20th as a special meeting.
Thank you. Are there any problems with any of the commissioners? I think we would have enough for a quorum or student members, tenant members. That would be fine. Thank you.
Okay. The second is we are proud to present to you our story of success for November, Mr. Dean Kaufman. Mr. Kaufman is a participant in our Housing Plus program through our Housing Authority, and he presents his story of success and several of the jobs he has held, as well as his progress in earning money in his escrow account, his savings account that he's built up through employment through this program. And we were excited to present this story of success to you for November. A couple updates on the city council action items that were considered at the meeting last week. First and foremost, the City Council approved the Second Amendment to the loan agreement for the Joseph House project that Commission unanimously approved at our last meeting in October. City Council also approved the CDBG substantial amendment to our annual action plan unanimously, as well as City Council approved the inclusionary housing agreement for Shea Homes with similar comments that we heard by, I believe, one or two of our commissioners at the last meeting. Those comments specifically were in regards to the developer building the units on site instead of paying the in lieu fee. The developer, under our housing opportunity ordinance, the developer has the option to either build the units on site or pay the in lieu fee. So as a developer, as a private business owner, they're gonna likely choose the option that's in the best financial interest of their business and follow the cheaper option, right? However, based on the direction that we received from our commissioners, as well as the direction we received from City Council, we are implementing two small changes in the way we process our inclusionary housing agreements where the developer chooses to pay the in lieu fee. First, we are going to communicate the preference of our mayor and City Council that the developer build the units on site. Obviously, that preference doesn't have any teeth to it, but we are going to absolutely communicate that to it when we provide our comments to the developer who's is proposing to pay the in lieu fee. And then second, which is more important, we are going to integrate a requirement in our inclusionary housing plan that's submitted by a developer that if they choose to pay the in lieu fee, that they must provide a letter to our mayor and City Council, specifically stating the reason why they're deciding to pay the in lieu fee instead of building the units on site, as well as specific detailed financial information on why they're making that decision. We hope that will be sufficient for our commissioners who've expressed those concerns about developers simply paying the in lieu fee instead of building the units on site. And we hope that will be sufficient information for our mayor and City Council as well. Two small changes there. And then lastly, on November 13th, this past Monday, we brought our Affordable Housing Fund's policies and procedures to the Economic Development, Infrastructure and Budget and Technology Committee. The committee, the council members who chair the committee, they directed staff to bring the item forward as a work study back to City Council. So we're currently discussing with our city manager's office on when and or how to bring back that item back to City Council for consideration. And with that, I want to thank Sylvia very much for her presentation today on our CDBG application process, and we have no further comments.
Thank you, Mr. Run. At this time, we move to commission members. Please note that no member may speak more than once until all have had an opportunity to speak. Also, the commission may vote to limit our comments to 3 minutes each if we feel the need. At this time, I'd like to start at the end with student member Aurora Solano.
I have no comment.
Thank you very much. Senior tenant member Vasquez, pardon me.
I don't have any further comments so far.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner De Leon.
Of course. Great job, staff, once again. And I truly believe that if all commissions were as thorough and as proactive as our commission, we'd have some traction out in the city. So thank you to staff and thank you, fellow commissioners. You guys are doing a great job. I'm proud to be a part of this. Announcements, being a big Santa Ana guy. Santa Ana High School plays Godinez Fundamental this Friday at the Santa Ana Bowl for the playoffs. It's great to support your community and support our students. And Santa Ana High School has a litigation law academy program. It's like a direct pipeline to become an attorney. or get into law at a Santa Ana high school, and they went up against Mission Viejo in mock trial litigation, and they wiped the floor out of Mission Viejo High School. So it's a lot of talent, a lot of good stuff here in our city, and a lot of that is reflected on this commission. So that's all. Thank you.
I have no comments or questions.
Oh, thank you, Member Frazier. Vice Chair Tardif, any comments?
I may have missed this, and if I did, it's my fault. Did we decide that the meeting where we take the applicant's presentation will be at the Ross Annex, or did we not decide that yet?
We decided that we would spend the next few weeks before the December 20th meeting, and all the commissioners and representatives would digest the thoughts on that and come back, and we would discuss it one more time and take a vote on it.
Okay, thank you.
To keep it either here or to move it to the Ross Annex. Is that correct, Mr. Wren?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Commissioner Garcia?
Just a couple comments, or a few comments on a couple. Thank you again for the testimonials that you hand out to us for each meeting. I'm always touched by them because they demonstrate the impact that we're making out in the community, so thank you. Secondly, I'm looking forward, and thank you, staff, for your presentation. I'm looking forward to the CDBG process and presentations and reviewing the applications. It's always one of my favorite parts of being on this commission, so I really enjoy that, and I'm looking forward to it. Lastly, our last Historic Resources Commission meeting was last Thursday here in the chambers. So I will have a recap of accomplishments probably in the December meeting, and I'll give you the information of what we achieved this year, which was a lot, and so you can learn more about what we did. Thank you. And
Excellent.
happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ramos.
Yeah, I have a few comments. Thank you, staff, for all the work that you do. It's very appreciated. And I also would like to make a request for notices, or maybe more of a calendar on for sunshine ordinance meetings, that projects that this commission, development projects that this commission might see, if we could be made aware of those meetings when they're taking place. That'd be great. And also, I'm also wondering if there's any upcoming groundbreaking, grand opening events for a few of the development projects that have been mentioned here. And if we could receive a calendar of those, I don't know what would be best, whatever basis would work best for staff, but that'd be very nice. And have a very nice little break next week for the holidays if you observe. And if not, just have fun sleeping in.
Thank you, Commissioner. For myself, I would just like to thank Sylvia and Chris. Sylvia for the presentation, and Chris for answering the questions as well. Thank you very much. And Judson, you did touch base, or sorry, Mr. Brown, you did touch base on the language that you would put forth in future applications, that the preference is for on-site affordable housing to be built, and asking them to submit a letter to the City Council, when in fact most of them will not do that because they want to pay the in lieu fee. The other thing I was having difficulty with, I'm not sure if you can help me with this. I've emailed twice now to the staff, Becky Magalon and Jorge Garcia, trying to pick a date to present to City Council for the accomplishments of this commission for the current year, and I have not heard back. That was something that they had asked us to come forth. I had suggested the second City Council meeting of November, but now that might be too tight, so if I could ask for perhaps the first one in December.
And I greatly apologize on behalf of our staff for that delay in responding to you. I believe I was CC'd on your email to Becky and Jorge.
Yeah, no, the first one was on 10/15, and at that time I had said, I'm getting back to you about your request and give me a chance to talk to the other commissioners, and we'll be back to you. And I did go back. I checked my email on 10/27, and maybe with all the stuff going on, it got lost. So
no, I can agree. I actually had you scheduled to see you next week at the for your presentation at next Tuesday's City Council meeting, and I was assuming they were communicating with you directly.
No, so if I could move that to the first one in December and hear from somebody, then I can plan my time.
Absolutely. So we'll ensure to coordinate with our city manager's office to move your presentation to the first meeting in December.
If you could, because if I have some ample time, then I would go through Tay and ask any other commissioners that would like to attend, if possible, to be with me, to be at the presentation. That would be great. My last item I'd like to touch on, and I don't want to be insensitive to any of the other commissioners. I mean, most of the commissioners here, they work, they have jobs, they have a lot of other commitments, but I know I would like to just go on record saying that the attendance and responsiveness to these meetings could be a little bit better. Up until this afternoon, I didn't know if we were having a meeting, and it's really difficult to plan. I know Taze starts emailing on Thursday, and all of you are here, and I appreciate that, and most always do show up, but if my comments could reflect that I'd like the commissioners to be a little bit more responsive in the initial request from Tay on Thursday, Friday, so we have an idea if this is going to actually go forth, these meetings. Thank you. Are there any? I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, in regards to your presentation to City Council, you may be scheduled already for your presentation. I'm looking here at the meeting agenda, but we will get back to you. Are you available next Tuesday for your presentation? If you are in fact agendized.
That's fine. If we are, then let me know tomorrow so that I could reach out to any other commissioners or student representatives or tenant members that would like to come with me.
Okay. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And so that I can write the presentation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much, sir. I think that's all the comments we have from the commissioners. So at this time, the meeting is adjourned. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for, or special meeting will be scheduled for December 20th. Thank you very much, everybody.